really, when you think about the hard and fast technical metrics, you've got to be able to have essentially a trust inventory of where those relationships are, and you've got to kind of ratchet those down based on how your business works, how many IT resources you have, what kind of checks and balances you have, other compensating controls to wrap around those trust relationships to make sure they're narrowly tailored.
SC Media is proud to present this month's CISO Stories program. Each month, the CISO Stories program explores a cybersecurity topic selected by Cyber Risk Alliance's CISO community and provides content that examines that topic from a variety of perspectives. Hosted by Todd Fitzgerald, best-selling author of CISO Compass, the CISO Stories weekly podcast features content powered by the 1,100-plus members of the Cyber Risk Alliance's CISO community. Listen to previous CISO Stories podcast episodes at CISOstoriespodcast.com. Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit CISOstoriespodcast.com/CSC. I'm your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome George Finney, CISO at Southern Methodist University. Welcome, George.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Todd. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here. I always love talking with people that are in the educational space because you have access to lots of different information there. So what is it that attracted you to the cybersecurity field?
Oh gosh, we're going back a long ways. I think I got my start in security circa 2000, so almost 25 years ago. Started out on the network side, and it's certainly, my career has evolved a lot over time. I'm sure we'll get into that. But honestly, I think being able to make a difference in people's lives is what drives me. And protecting folks, when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Just fundamentally, after you get food, water, and shelter, it's still a part of the foundation of every human's experience. We need safety and security as the foundation of our human experience to achieve, whatever our potential is in our lives, right? Everybody's got a different, set of gifts that they can, bring to the world. And I think in security, we're helping people realize their full potential by giving them that. And I don't think there's another more rewarding career out there.
I love hearing you say the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because I used that a few years ago when we were talking about how do we grow the CISO community, and that there's certain basic fundamentals that people have to learn, and then there, as we move up the tier to become that full functioning CISO, to get to that point, we mapped it to the hierarchy of needs, which I think is a really interesting way to look at that.
Nice, yeah.
So today we're talking about zero trust. And metrics around zero trust, and how do we make sure that we're actually implementing things with zero trust. I know you've written some books around zero trust, and so tell us what sort of key indicators should we be looking at as we're evaluating how well our zero trust program is doing.
This is one of the most common questions that I've gotten since my book Project Zero Trust came out. When I have toured around the country talking to folks, everybody asks, okay, can we actually get to zero? Obviously, it's a living, breathing thing. Companies are always changing, but there are really two avenues that you have to look at when it comes to measuring your zero trust journey. The first is you can look at the maturity of your zero trust program, and we'll talk about that a little more in a second. But the other way is kind of more. I think it speaks maybe to more of the technical folks out there, but it's really trying to get a grasp on the trust relationships, the trust boundaries that you have in your organization, how your technology interacts with other technologies, other platforms, and measure the trust that way. So on the maturity side, in the book, John Kindervag let me publish his maturity model. John Kindervag is the gentleman that coined the term zero trust, and so he's been a consultant for 15 years, specifically talking about zero trust now. So in developing that maturity model, right, he really wanted to help organizations, not just when he was with them, but to keep maturing after he moved on. So definitely that's a great resource for folks. The Cloud Security Alliance and CISA have also partnered to develop their own maturity model. It's slightly different from John's original one. John obviously was also highly engaged with CISA and the Cloud Security Alliance to develop that maturity model, right? But in terms of maturity, you want to grow your organization and be able to automate things, to have automatic discovery, to ensure that the care and feeding of your zero trust program doesn't end, when your zero trust project ends, right? It has to continuously kind of evolve with your organization as you grow over time. So definitely think about maturity, right? Especially if you're on the journey itself, you want to be able to show progress every 6 months, every year when you're, as a CISO, you're going to the board. So you want to make sure that funding for your zero trust journey stays there, right? You've got to keep checking back in, and that helps tell your story. But from a more technical perspective, one of the challenges with zero trust is really just helping your IT folks be able to recognize where trusts are. So in the book we talked about Kindervag's 5-step methodology for zero trust. So there are 5 steps, right? It's define your protect surface, map your transaction flows, architect your controls, define policy, and then monitor and maintain. But of that 5-step process, it's really step 4, the defining your policies, where you really start to get granular access into different systems, right? So take the example, you've got an IT admin, and maybe there's a firewall rule to allow them direct access to manage their server, for example. That's a trust relationship, and that's a trust relationship that zero trust says, hey, let's not have that firewall rule. Let's find other more granular ways of controlling that. So really, when you think about the hard and fast technical metrics, you've got to be able to have essentially a trust inventory of where those relationships are, and you've got to kind of ratchet those down based on how your business works, how many IT resources you have. What kind of checks and balances you have, other compensating controls to wrap around those trust relationships to make sure they're narrowly tailored for your organization. But I think that trust inventory and understanding where your risks are is also a big part of how you ratchet back. But just recognizing a trust, I mean, I think is something that it's not natural to think about, right? We want to have easy access to be able to do our jobs as quickly as and effectively as possible. So thinking about how we do those, right? You solve them with technical challenges or technical controls, but really bringing that back to measure over time. You've got to again continually evolve with your organization. As you acquire new companies or as you bring on new technology. You're always going to be finding new ways that you come in, and really, I think the final way of measuring is are you doing penetration tests, and not just the generic test where they look for access, but you want to do deep dives into applications. You want to be getting that next level of granularity, and that can help you identify trusts. And again, over time, you want to show. Hey, we've identified these, and we've done something about it. Either we had something in place, or we put something to compensate.
Is there something that you do differently in your penetration testing and the metrics that you're collecting that you would in a zero trust type environment versus not pursuing the zero trust?
I think that's a really insightful question. I mean, I think in some ways a pen test is a pen test, but I think I like to say that the most important part of zero trust is people. People are the ones that use the technology. They're the ones that configure the technology, and so if the security nerds in the room are the only ones thinking about your pen test or thinking about zero trust, you're naturally going to fail at your zero trust journey. So really, it's about educating folks, right? It's about bringing everyone into the fold of zero trust. So when you think about this concept, this is step one of the methodology. Think about your protect surface, right? Say your crown jewels is in your organization an ERP system. You want to make sure everyone's at the table, right? Both at the beginning of the pen test as you're scoping it, and then at the end as you're getting your debrief. So I think a lot of security teams, right? They keep that secret. It stays in the family, and they just go tell here's your checklist, IT worker, go fix these 5 findings that they found, but they're not part of the conversation, right? And I think that idea of a protect surface helps enable the teamwork that's required to have success at zero trust long term, to make it sustainable.
So how do you measure your end user trust and the device trust that you have as you're implementing zero trust?
It's always a moving target. So that's a little bit of the challenge with measuring zero trust overall, right? But I think if you take a safe list based approach, right? If you're really going for least privilege, hopefully you've been able to identify what users actually need access to. Right. I mean, and we all know this. We've been doing security for years, but users just want open access to everything. Let me talk to every website on the internet. Let me get access to every app. Oh, and by the way, let me have full admin rights. As an executive, does the CEO need admin access to whatever crown jewel systems? It's not a it's not a status thing. It's not a reward for doing your job. Do you need access? And so really having that inventory of who needs access to data, to services, I think is really important. And having that inventory is really the first step in being able to measure what's out there and how much access do people have that's maybe over and above what they really need to get their jobs done.
Do you think we should start reporting that, the reduction in access as like a positive thing? If we're starting off and we see everybody has access to everything, and now we've actually limited and reduced our risk that way?
Oh, 100%. So when you look at take GDPR, for example, right? Only the folks that should have access to the data should get access to the data, right? This is least privileged. There are a number of other compliance things that have come up at a state level or at a country level that really embody some of these zero trust principles. I think again, as regulation kind of continues to get put in place over time, we have to follow that best practice of reducing access. And being able to measure that, again, that's so powerful to create the kind of culture in an organization that says, what, we don't like to have exceptions to this policy, right? Okay, the CEO wants whatever access to do something. Well, you've got to be able to show, no, we're this is our trend, and if we did grant access to a supervisor to a department head to this access, that's going to show up in my report, and people should be asking questions. Okay, why did we grant this exception? Was there really a business need, or was it, hey, a personality of an individual, really wanted that, and what, there wasn't a business case, right? That should be the kind of conversations that are going on at your IT governance levels, or your board reporting levels.
Mhm. You had talked about policies. How do we make sure that the policies from the department to department, that they're following these policies in the zero trust, architecture, and that we're actually getting better at that?
Well, I want to be careful, because policies mean different things to different people. Um, you might be referring to policies at an organizational level, like we follow the policies and procedures. So that's one set of policies that you need to think about. And definitely, if your organization's ever the victim of a breach, or you've got an SEC or FTC investigation, that's the standard you're going to be held to, right? If you said in a policy that you do something, you've 100% got to be doing it. Because if you're not, if it was an aspirational policy, we think we want to be doing it that way, you're going to be held liable to that standard, right? So you've got to think about that very carefully. Consult with your legal departments or other folks to make sure that everybody understands what those are, and that's a reasonable set of expectations for folks to follow. Same with contracts. So I think of that as like the big P policy. When it comes to the little p policies, again, I come to networking, or come to security through networking. So when I think about policies, my brain goes to firewall policies. It goes to access control lists. And again, I think, there's the 5 stages of the design methodology. Policies really are the 4th step in that process. But when you think about policy today, policies aren't just for firewalls anymore. So your antivirus, your EDR tool will have policies. Your identity system will have policies that your identity folks need to go configure. You might have developers pushing policy as code down to your containerized applications. So there are so many different policies and places, control points that you have to manage globally. Again, I think this is why it's so important to define your protect surface as the first step in this process. So you've brought together your interdisciplinary team of folks that protect that protect surface, right? You've got probably a networking or a security firewall operations person. You've got your antivirus folks. You've got your identity team, right? All of those folks together, when you're having the policy conversation, you have to have all of those different little key policies aligned with one another, so that you've protected that protect surface in the right way. It's incredibly challenging to get right, but you have to have that as a team effort, so that, again, and I'm probably guilty of this as well. But when I think about my antivirus, we have an antivirus project. We go implement our new whatever tool of the month or year, and we push that out globally to everyone. And instead, I think we need to specifically focus and custom tailor that policy for every, we call it a protect surface, but maybe that's a service, maybe that's an application, maybe that's a grouping of databases or what have you, so that all of those policies are tightly aligned, and are aligned with the business goals, right? The objectives that you have, the resources you have available, whatever your organization looks like.
How do you quantify how do you quantify what happens with breaches in terms of a zero trust architecture? I mean, obviously, we go through this process of trying to get the funds to be able to implement a zero trust architecture, and then we implement it, and now our executive management wants to see results. And how do we quantify that this is worth the effort, and that it's actually reducing our risk?
So great. I'm glad you said that, because so first, let me just say, I don't think of zero trust as an architecture. So in the book, again, we spell it out really carefully. Zero trust is a strategy, and that's an important difference. So architecture is one of the steps in your strategy, in your design methodology. But my definition of zero trust is it's a strategy for preventing or containing breaches by removing the trust relationships we have in digital systems. So why do you need a strategy? Well, what is a strategy for? Well, it's for getting everyone in an organization, on a team, on the same page and moving in the same direction, right? So we know what the goal is. The goal is to prevent or contain breaches. The strategy, the plan that we have for achieving that goal is removing trust relationships in digital systems, spotting the trust boundaries, and making sure those are appropriately defined so that we can prevent or contain a breach. So how do you quantify how do you get budget or funding to go do this? Well, zero trust, because it's a strategy for prevention, is by definition the most cost-effective strategy that we have, right? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. There's been a number of studies around zero trust to show that it's on the order of magnitude of 10 times less expensive than a strategy, if you can call it that, of compliance, right? Everybody that's been breached has been compliant for PCI or NIST or whatever. But what was really missing was that idea of prevention first, of containment. So say there, you could still have a zero trust environment that is breached, but in terms of again, it's in terms of maturity, right? In terms of progress, you should be able to show that had we not done this, had we not focused on prevention and containment, this threat actor might have been able to execute lateral movement and gotten beyond just one database into all databases, for example. That's containment, right? In terms of time, maybe they got access to a system, but we instead of having a dwell time of whatever the average is, 9 months or a year, we reduce that dwell time down to 5 minutes or whatever the number is, right? I think, again, that's the focus. So in terms of telling the story, in terms of quantification, right, you should be able to show, hey, we did a pen test and it took, our SOC, 3 days to identify this particular alert. And there was a volume of activity. With zero trust, we reduced that down to 10 minutes. That's how you quantify your stages on the zero trust journey. And maybe it took you 2 years to get to that point. But as long as you're taking steps forward and showing that progress over time, that's really, again, how you bring everyone together. Mm-hmm. Everybody's on the same page. We see the progress, we see the mission, and we believe in it, and we're going to keep working at it.
It's interesting as we look at these things. I was just thinking that we wrote the CISO Compass book 5 years ago, which spawned this podcast, in fact. And I'm thinking about the emerging technologies, and it was listed in there, but we didn't cover it much in depth at all. And I think it just shows how we have to be continually adapting and moving in these directions to make sure that as we're looking at these strategies that we do keep looking at emerging technologies and what's out there, and is there a better way to secure what we've done.
Absolutely. Again, security is totally different than it was 5 years ago, right? The tools we use, the things we have to protect. Spoiler alert, but I'm working on the sequel to Project Zero Trust. We're working with the publisher. It should be out probably in 2025 sometime. But there were a number of things that I didn't cover. Just the book came out 2 years ago, but a lot's changed since then. Yeah. So specifically, we're going to tackle artificial intelligence and how to do zero trust in an artificial intelligence kind of environment. And that means a lot of different things. Maybe you're building your own LLM. Maybe you're using someone else's LLM. Maybe you're using AI generated content or chatbots, right? There's so many different things that AI, means in practice. Everyone I've talked to, I asked the question, do you think, zero trust can protect artificial intelligence? Everybody says yes, right? It's all of the same strategies and practices to prevent bad things from happening. And I'm so encouraged, actually. So many of the folks that are in artificial intelligence today, as one of the next generation things that's going on, we're already all thinking about safety and security of AI. And I think that's a testament to what the security community has done over the last decade. We've really come together, and we're collaborating so much better than when we were kind of kicking around the term cloud when it was a new term back in 2007 2008.
Yeah, everything changes. We just produced a complementary book to the CISO Compass called the Privacy Leader Compass, and we had 60 people that helped contribute to that, and everybody wanted to write about AI and privacy, and so there's a lot of AI and privacy in there, but we weren't, that wasn't on our radar 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And so we have to adapt, and this industry is moving so fast. So I'm glad to see that you're combining those two things together and coming out with a new book. So thanks a lot, George. It's been a pleasure talking with you today. Is there any final advice that you would have for new CISOs, emerging CISOs, current or experienced CISOs, as they're looking at the zero trust I said architecture strategy, and trying to make that work in their organizations?
So there's the saying in business, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? That was coined by Peter Drucker, probably 20 years ago. And it's also true for cybersecurity. Culture eats cybersecurity for breakfast. And so if you're not think strategically, right? That's what we have to do as CISOs. But think about culture as well, right? How are you influencing culture so that you're not going to be there as a CISO for every security related decision? How do you influence the folks around you? How do you connect with them, right? So much of again, when you read Peter Drucker's argument about why culture eats strategy for breakfast, it's really the leaders that came in with these grand visions or strategies. They didn't have empathy for what the employees were doing day to day, right? Again, I said it earlier, but people are the most important part of zero trust. So connecting, building relationships, making sure the culture of your organization it is one that is supportive of your zero trust strategy. Incredibly important. There's so many ways to do that. We could have a whole separate podcast about security culture. But yeah, culture eats cybersecurity for breakfast. Make sure that as a CISO, you are influencing and shaping that culture of your organization to support your zero trust journey.
Yeah. Great advice. Peter Drucker is one of my favorites. He has a great book called The Effective Executive that I think everybody should read. So thanks a lot. Thanks, George, for taking the time with us today.
Thank you for having me, Todd.
Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode of the CISO Stories podcast. Please subscribe to the CISO Stories podcast and you will receive a new story each Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you next week for a new episode.